Welcome, music historians. If you've been to the events we've done at the BME and the Museum of Liverpool, you'll know that museums are engaging in pop culture. But it's quite a new thing. You know, it's really quite a recent thing. And I'm delighted we've got Marion Leonard with us today from the Institute of Popular Music, which is part of the music department within the University of Liverpool. Marion Leonard led on what I think is a groundbreaking exhibition, in terms of the subject matter and the size of it and its impact. And it was an exhibition about Liverpool music, an exploration and a celebration of Liverpool music. It was called The Beat Goes On. It's a temporary exhibition, and it was created in 2008, or went live in 2008, to celebrate capital culture. And that's probably my favourite exhibition I've ever worked on. And Marion led on that. She was the lead curator. I learned so much from her in the whole process. But for me, it's groundbreaking in that it showed you the measure of the quality of what music could be in delivering exhibitions that tell you about music, place, identity, and the history. So I'm delighted to hand you over to Marion, who's going to take you through The Beat Goes On and all the challenges and the lovely opportunities.
Thank you very much, Paul. And it was a fantastic project to work on with the team that Paul was working in as well. So what I want to do today, I'll give you a bit of background on that and then talk through some of the challenges of putting together a display like that and get your input into how you might have gone about it as well. So just to sort of start off then, I work at the university, as Paul was saying, but I had the privilege of working on a 2-year secondment to National Museums Liverpool as a way to put this together. So it took 2 years of development with a team as well. So it was a very big project to work on. So I was the lead curator, and it was the first retrospective exhibition in the city of Merseyside's music history. Together with a number of colleagues, we've done a lot of work around city heritage. So we could draw on that and feed that into the project. The background to the project that I was working on was that it was in the lead up to the European Capital of Culture. And so National Museums Liverpool put together 2 blockbuster exhibitions. So The Beat Goes On was one of them, and the other one was the social history called Magical History Tour. And at the time, the Museum of Liverpool, that wasn't even built at the time. And so I was working in the curatorial team that were working towards that, but that wasn't even finished. So instead, we were sort of thinking about how does this exhibition give a voice and an approach that the Museum of Liverpool could then take on board. So it was like the ambition of the museum to capture the global significance of Liverpool and its unique place in history and culture, and also relating that into the port, the people, creativity. And so all of those things were part of the play of what we were trying to think about as well, to think about how could we bring those things out in this project. The plan then for the exhibition, we had a proposal, a task to do. So it was a blockbuster exhibition, had to appeal to lots of different age groups. And people coming into that museum tend to be a lot of younger or family audiences. So we had to think about that, about how we might engage different people that might not connect to those histories, but at the same time, maybe people that knew those histories really, really well. So we were taking it from post-war to the present day and trying to think about all of the different types of music that was going on, and then how they linked into the identity of the city and the culture of the city. I think the other thing around music is it's very throwaway, isn't it? You know, if you think, and perhaps even more so now, you know, if you think about all the flyers that you might pick up, the posters, you're talking today about fanzines, and even those are printed on quite low-grade paper. They're not meant to stick around forever. So that idea of the ephemerality of popular music, and if you think now that you find out things, it's just through looking at, you know, Instagram feeds or Facebook or those sorts of things, and it's kind of gone in this flow as well. So I think that idea of how do you find stuff that people might have thrown away. And a lot of people said to us, oh, I've got those things. You know, a DJ might say, well, I've played in those clubs, I've got them. And then they go off and they came back and were like, no, I don't actually. They've all been skipped at some point, you know, or I've moved house. So actually finding things was quite an experience as well. Some places had created their own archives, but other places it had just kind of got lost along the way as well. So that was one of our tasks. And this is part of a display around dance music in the city, where we had got different flyers and things to put on show. Second challenge, where do you start? Some people were saying let's start with the 60s because of the Beatles. Some people were saying we've got to be chronological, go from 45 onwards. Other idea was to go thematic. We talked a lot about this, even before I came on board for those 2 years. I think we had a year before where we were trying to work through what are the main points, what's the approach. We went thematic and we started off, we were trying to make sure we had quite a lot of stuff going on in each of those themes. Then we thought it would be really important to talk about how do people start out. We looked at different community music and young people developing their styles. Image and design, so looking at record labels, fashion, record sleeve design, music video. How do you get to hear about stuff? So we looked at radio stations, recommendations, through mates, you know, all of that sort of thing. Technology, so looking at music, how do people, what instruments are they into, and studios, and then thinking about the global impact. So we sort of had those as our main themes, and then we broke that. This is sort of how you'd go into the exhibition and walk through. So we had these sort of modular sections. We created a little music studio in the middle. And I think the next challenge was about diversity and about how to bring different voices into that story as well. So the approach we took was really to try and give voices to lots and lots of different people. So we spoke to lots of different people, and we didn't want it just to be from the point of view of the famous bands. We also wanted to make audiences and fans part of that story, to think about how do you experience music. If you go along to an event, a club, or if you're a fan, how do you do that? We went out and interviewed a lot of people because, as I said, a lot of material just didn't exist. So we had to go out and speak to people. So we were asking them what it was like when you were starting out and what's your influences, career paths and performance, and then trying to edit them together as particular videos to get those different aspects as well. And we tried to pick quite a variety of people as well within that to get some diversity. Yeah, so another challenge was really about, you know, making sure that we captured everything, and then I think people maybe are more conscious of that now, but I think we were really trying to foreground that. And I would put gender as part of that quite often within music history in general, women are not as well represented or remembered. You were talking about Griselda Pollock, and you were thinking about it in the art sphere as well. So we were keen to make sure that history of music was well represented. And I just wanted to mention as well, this is Nina, just started a PhD with us actually, and she put this together for last week for International Women's Day, and it's a capture of the amount of women that are making music currently on Merseyside. And I don't think it's exhaustive by any means either, but it's really nice. She's cross-checked it all with everyone's different feed to check they were still active and still city-based. So it's a really big piece of work, but I think it's really nice. And then I think the other thing we were trying to do is thinking about, once people come in to the show, how do you connect and how do you get people interested? And again, I think it was, you know, tapping into things like people's personal memories of music and the emotions that has. You know, it's trying to make those real connections for people, that it's not just information, that it's something they can connect to. We had lots of interactives, and it was all about the senses as well. So there were things you could touch and play with, from mixing desks to lots of on-screen things where you could get more layers. So we like we were saying earlier about, there's so many things to try and put into it. So we wanted to get, you could spend 2 hours in there, or you could come back, as lots of people did, multiple times and go, I only got a touch of that, so I'll go into it more. We wanted people to be able to see things, but also that it wasn't a silent space, that we could, you know, that you could go and you could hear things. And we also had earphones, so it's just a single one, so that people could still chat to one another whilst they were doing it, so they weren't too isolated by that as well. So there was lots of stuff going on that we wanted to get exclusives as well. We had things like the original lyrics, Beatles lyrics was part of the making music section, and, you know, musical instruments. And then we had this karaoke section in the middle where you could sing along. I think that was to do with SAE as well, wasn't it? That engineering some of the material. So yeah, pretty packed. Just to say, you know, we got just shy of 500,000 visitors in the end. It was quite popular, I think, with visiting public as well. We also wanted it to have a legacy. So I think that's the problem with a temporary exhibition. You know, they come and they go, and if you didn't get along, you've missed it. So together with staff and students at the university, we put together, as part of the Institute of Popular Music, an online resource around those themes. And it was on the museum website for about 10 years, I think. So having lots of different pieces, photographs and stuff. A lot of students used it for essays and different things like that. So I think that's all I wanted to say about it, but happy to take any questions as well.
There's a lot of facilitation of all those different things that goes on. So facilitating the events, facilitating the recordings, the business side of the music industry.
Yeah. It's amazing, Bob. Yeah.
And I hope you don't mind me saying, like, how come there wasn't so much to do with the business side? Because obviously there's a lot of key figures in the Liverpool industry, all the way from, like, we learn about Mona Best from Holly Tesla, all the way to Modern Sky now. Yeah. So, like, it'd be nice to sort of see how that transitioned as well, and how underneath all this, how was all that facilitated, how was all that supported? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Because we did talk to promoters, record labels, we talked to all of those, and so we got a bit of their history as part of that. Or, for example, in the club section, we talked to people and they told us about their journey and how to put on temporary nights to establishing a club. So we tried to capture it in those sorts of ways. But I think it's also a challenge in terms of archives, about music business. You know, about how is that information captured. It's quite an informal economy. It's a lot of word of mouth. There's no minute takers, you know. So there's just sort of, so I think actually, how do you you know, there's not that many music industry archives. Museum of Science and Industry in Manchester, for example, has got the Hacienda archive, and it does have business papers there as part of it, but those are quite unusual to get hold of. So we have to rely on things like, you know, oral testimony and things like that as a way to make that. But it's a really good point about how to make the background foregrounded. For
budding musicians, that, like, obviously the business isn't the most interesting side of it, but it's a very important side of it. And it's like learning, like, how did the Beatles get their first deal? How did they meet Brian? Stuff like that, I think, would just be not only interesting but important for young musicians to learn. How do you actually leverage a deal? How do you meet people, type of thing? Interesting. But yeah, it was really interesting to hear about all this. Really good.
For The Beat Goes On, we took it as, how did they meet? So we took that meeting point, and National Museums Liverpool had acquired the stage from St Peter's Church. Yeah. So when I first arrived, it was just in pieces of wood, and then we had a big discussion about how to display that and sort of strip it. It would all been painted green and stuff, so it had to all be like stripped back to how it would have looked originally. Yeah. So it's trying to take that moment as a starting point. Yeah. Yeah.
I worked with Marion, and I'd just become a curator, and I learned so much about how to research and how to go about putting things together and making those connections, and it helped me in my career so much. Marion, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thanks. It's really